right, welcome to another episode of Automation Ladies. It's just Nikki this time. This is actually a guest that I scouted out at Automate recently, and we were trying to get a planning call together, but I was like, hey, let's just hop on the pod, because who has time for that these days? I know I don't. So I appreciate you, Katie, very much coming on the show with short notice, without a prep call. But I try to tell people, part of why I love having the show is because it gives me a chance to get to know and have conversations with a lot of people who do things that I find to be interesting. And it can be hard for me to fit like tangential things like this into my calendar, having a full-time job and kids and all of that stuff. So just getting a chance to do it on the podcast is even better. So thank you so much for coming, Katie. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on today.
Absolutely. And for those of you that are listening on the podcast, I was just noting before we started recording that Katie is outside in a beautiful setting with like bushes and trees behind her. And this will definitely tie in once you hear about what she does, but it looks like a wonderful day. Where are you?
I'm in San Gregorio, and it's always beautiful here. There's maybe a couple days of rain in the winter, but overall it is sunny and beautiful and always the right temperature. So I really enjoy working here.
San Gregorio,
California.
What state?
California.
Oh, okay. And is that in Southern California then, I'm guessing?
It's near San Francisco, about an hour south. Along the coast. So I'm 10 minutes from the beach. Oftentimes in the morning, I will go down to the beach for a morning run, and then come back and work outside all day. So I pretty much have it made.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so jealous. I guess I've made it like down to Santa Cruz. I know where like Monterey is, but I've never heard of San Gregorio.
It's a very small population, 700 or so farming area. So I do Agtech as will come up, I'm sure, later in the podcast.
Yeah.
So I'm working directly on a farm most of the time, developing our systems and testing, immediately on the farm rather than developing things in a lab and then testing on the farm later just to find out that they don't work. So we're on the coast, sort of in between Half Moon Bay and Santa Cruz.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, that's got to be beautiful. I lived in the Bay Area for 10 years, in the East Bay. I loved the weather was a little bit better. Not that I can complain. I wouldn't complain about the coast at all if I was actually in like one of the coastal towns. And it's just amazing. It's amazing. I live in Houston now. It's really humid and hot and flat and gross. And I'm here for people reasons, not for the environmental reasons, but very nostalgic about my time in the Bay Area. It's one of those places where like you just can't ask for more when it comes to the natural beauty, the stuff to do. And I actually spent a little bit of time in Salinas, which I guess is like one of the lettuce capitals of the United States, in addition to Yuma, Arizona, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, a lot of ag in Salinas, absolutely.
Yeah. So what, right around you, what are some of the farms that you're working on with your customers? What are they growing?
Well, our partner farm here, Twisted Fields in San Gregorio, works, they grow a huge variety of things, which has been incredible for us to test with. So we have leafy greens, we have root vegetables, we have orchards, we have animals, so, chickens, goats, cows. We have quite varied terrain as well. So, hills and, muddy pits and lakes and stuff. So it's been really great to have that huge variety. It's 127 acres, so we do a lot of testing on a variety of crops and terrains. And I think one of the things that makes the Rotate8 solutions unique is that it's not so specific to a single crop or a single process. Yeah. We design very general purpose systems, so being able to test on such a wide array of things is really incredible.
Very cool. Well, then let's back up a little bit. I haven't quite given an introduction, and generally on the show I let people introduce themselves because sometimes I'm meeting you not for the first time. We met very briefly at Automate, but we didn't get a chance to have a conversation. So yeah, I'd love for you to tell me and our audience a little bit about yourself and then what you're doing right now at Rotate8.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Katie Bradford. I am an engineer turned founder, CEO, and still engineer. I founded a startup called Rotate8. We're doing farming automation systems. So this includes our mobile platform, our precision farming rover, which is a general purpose tool for holding farming implements for things like soil prep, seeding, weeding, cultivation, harvest aid, and then also a suite of IoT devices that automate anything that sensors or actuates. So we have it running our egg incubator. We have it running our irrigation modules for sprinklers, temperature and humidity control in greenhouses, gates, opening and closing gates, the chicken doors and lights. So quite a number of different processes that is very easy to configure for our end users. Yeah, my background, I went to school for electrical engineering. I love the kind of intersection of mechanical and electrical and software, and robotics and automation is really a place where that kind of all comes together in a really fun way. So I've always been drawn to robotics, and I've worked at companies doing forklifts, doing power tools, doing 3D printers, and agriculture is a place that is really special to me. I've always loved growing things. I spent 6 months as a harvest aid worker on a farm near Boston, and that was really hard. I learned a lot, and I learned that doing that is very difficult, and you do it in rain or shine or 100-degree weather. The weather there is not quite as nice as San Gregorio, so there were some rough days doing that. But I learned so much, and I saw so many opportunities for really simple automation that could help farmers. I mean, the amount of time people spent just walking around and turning on and off sprinklers, or carrying really heavy bins in and out of the fields that would just be great to put on like a mechanized cart, for instance. These really simple processes that would just save us so much time and effort and pain, frankly, to help out small farmers. So that's kind of where the idea for Rotate8 came from.
And I'm curious, I guess, what kind of network, what do you have around you, or what's in your background that made you go, not just, hey, here's some problems I can solve, but like, I'm going to build a team and start a company and solve these. Like, is that something you've always known you wanted to do, be an entrepreneur, or did like some circumstances kind of coalesce to make you think, hey, this is something I can do? Because I know tons of people with lots of cool ideas that they would never pursue them in terms of becoming a founder or trying to build technology, doing that kind of stuff. I think it takes a little bit of a special breed. Mm-hmm. And some people, I think, know for like since they were a kid that they are that kind of person. And I'm curious if that holds true for you, or what circumstances led to you taking the plunge and starting a company to do this?
Yeah, great question. So I've always known that I've been interested in entrepreneurship. When I was in college, I was part of a thing called the Kessler Fellowship, which was a program that matched entrepreneurial juniors with a startup that they could work at, and basically it kind of paid for you to work there, because oftentimes the startups were so small and they didn't have the budget for an intern, especially one who just wanted to really learn and dive in. So I got to be part of that program, and I was very involved in the entrepreneurship ecosystem at Cornell. And then, graduating, I worked at a startup, and a number of, I think my entire career has been startups, frankly, for a long time. Yeah. And I've always really been interested in, getting in on the ground level and having a lot of, input on the system architecture design. And also as I was going through my career, I kind of realized I could probably do more as well in terms of, I'm an engineer, and I think I'm pretty damn good at it, but I also have, a lot of interest and bandwidth to do more and to be more involved. And when I was at Vecna Robotics, I met the CEO of Vecna, Daniel Theobald, who was, starting to do some work thinking about how we can apply these automation systems to agriculture, and then bought a farm out here in San Gregorio. And so when, we kind of started talking, and I was interested in doing this automation project, and, how we could work together on that. That's sort of how I ended up taking the plunge. It was not necessarily anticipating being a CEO from the get-go. I kind of always saw myself as engineer plus, but the opportunity came up, and it just seemed like the right thing for me at the time, and I've really been enjoying it. It's definitely, like you said earlier on our conversation before this, it is a lot. It is definitely a commitment, and it can be kind of overwhelming at times, but I do see that I am having that experience of getting to do a lot of engineering work, but also getting to kind of shape the company and shape the product in a really exciting way, and engage with customers and do all these things that I never really thought that I would be primarily responsible for, and here we are. So it's been a lot, and it's been exciting, and I've really been enjoying it so far.
Very cool. How long has the company been operating, and what stage are you guys at?
So we've been operating for about 2 years. We are at the stage where we have a product that we were testing on this farm and with a couple other beta customers. We're working on basically getting it to a point where it's very, very robust, and the user experience is really frictionless before kind of expanding our beta, or expanding to full production and scaling to open sales for the product. But yeah, we're like I mentioned earlier, we're doing a lot of testing right on the farm, so getting a lot of really good data. You build a you build a module in the lab and then you bring it outside and it doesn't work maybe the way you think it would. It's a very unique environment for automation because you have, obviously you have, dirt and mud and hills and whatnot, but you also, as it turns out, have things like snails or a family of mice building a home in your electrical box for your product. So, things like that you might not realize if you're just working in a lab.
Yeah, no, for sure. The edge cases just increase as the environment gets less controlled, and outdoor nature is pretty much like the least controllable type of environment that I can imagine. Also, yeah, I'm curious. So not to make this about myself, but that's kind of how these things work. My ADHD likes to relate my conversations with other people with experiences that I've had. So I used to work in machine vision, and I also was in the Bay Area for my first couple jobs, and I similarly took part in entrepreneurial stuff during college, but I went to business school, and so I took several entrepreneurial type classes, and I pitched a product, and I got told hey, you should go out and get funding for this, and luckily I was smart enough to be I don't know anything, and I probably shouldn't try to run a company without any work experience. Although I did work at my dad's company for years when I was a kid. And I think that's what made me a really good early startup employee, because I've worked in small companies that are growing, that need lots of different things. But I digress. I had some customers that were working in the agricultural area back in the day, and this was probably about 15 years ago now. Packing and packaging and those sorts of applications are pretty standard, but people wanting to try to do robotic picking, sorting, all kinds of stuff like that. And I worked in machine vision, so I got some random requests and projects for outdoor or agriculture related vision system applications. And at the time, I was not able to sell any of them. I either said no right off the bat because it was obvious, it was the technology I had to offer was not there yet to do what they wanted. Or we did some testing, but those edge cases always killed it. And testing in the lab is one thing, like you said, and then you take it out in the field, and then so much is variable when it comes to the lighting and this and that, and you just can't control those things outside. And as much as it seems like a great idea that you could have the vision system color grade the apple and then pick it, it never made it to a point where it was feasible at that time. What have you seen, I guess, in your time in this space? Is it that the technology has gotten better and we just now have the sensors and systems and the AI to decipher the information coming in from these systems to be able to handle these things better? Or is it just that we've had a longer time to figure out how the heck to handle it? I mean, I'm kind of answering my own question here. Obviously, tech has advanced in the last 15 years. But do you feel like it's still a huge challenge? Or it's more about now just putting the right things together and getting the use cases out there, and somebody didn't think of what you're doing before in the way that you thought of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like you said, technology has definitely developed in the last 15 years, and we have a lot better systems. And also, I will say a lot better, but also a lot cheaper. So, the same system that might be doing a really high quality camera analysis and the computing power required to do that is also gotten a lot cheaper. So it's more feasible for farmers. That's one thing I think when you switch over from things like manufacturing factories, et cetera, to ag, you have to be really sensitive of is margins in ag are much slimmer and overall budgets are smaller, especially depending on the scale that you're looking at. I think a lot of times engineers get really excited by really cool projects. I'm going to use AI and computing to, pick apples, or I'm going to, whatever. And those are really amazing. And I think they're coming a long way and are going to make a big difference. But I also think there's such an opportunity, and this is kind of where Rotate8 is coming at it for more low cost and general purpose solutions. So instead of, if you can train a machine vision algorithm to, detect an apple that's ready to pick. And if you are purely an apple orchard and you have, the budget to do that, that is fantastic. And I think, again, there's a huge opportunity there. One thing that we're looking at is, I think something like 80% of farms are small polyculture farms, which are growing a number of crops, and they're doing a number of processes, and they don't have a budget for just their apples to be picked by a robot and use this, AI vision system. So one thing we're looking at is, okay, if we have this farm, like this farm here, that's growing, we're growing potatoes and carrots and kale and Swiss chard and berries and strawberries and asparagus and artichokes. And is it going to make sense both financially and technologically to have one system that does all of those things? Are you going to have a specialized tool for every one of those crops and every one of those processes for those crops? So planting those crops, prepping the bed for those crops, irrigating, harvesting is of course a big one, weeding, probably not for a lot of these farms that we're talking to. They don't have it doesn't make sense for them right now. So I think one thing we're doing is stepping back and saying, okay, a lot of these really interesting tools exist. Of course, machine vision is very exciting. AI is very exciting. Some of these, gripper advancements are very exciting, but let's take a step back and do, bring automation that is already quite stable to farms. Things that are going to work every single time for them, and automate processes that are, big pain points, and help with harvest aid. We can provide, a platform for mechanizing harvest aid, but not necessarily picking every single one of those crops all at once for these polyculture farms, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so more like semi-automation in a way, like automating parts of the process or steps of the process, but not trying to go full on out like mechanized of everything.
And I will also say that one of the challenges that companies face when they're trying to build these even specialized tools, we've talked to people who are building, specialized seeders or weeders or harvest aids, think grippers for, robotic arms for gripping or, cultivating, so weeding between rows or in between crops even, is oftentimes they have to build the entire system. So they're not just building an AI camera system to detect this thing and then also, pick it or, weed it or what have you. They're also having to build the entire system to get that out into the field. So one thing that, again, Rotate8 is kind of providing is we have a platform that has been very well tested on a variety of soils and terrains and different types of crops. And it's very modular. We can quite easily change the base and change dimensions depending on what is required for a specific task. So if you're a company that's making a robot arm to pick apples, or you're making a seeder for a specific thing, or you're doing some kind of weeding solution, then we can work together and we can provide the base platform, so you don't have to do all of that development and all of the AI machine vision picking, etc. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so yeah, kind of like a mix and match platform. Some of the solutions can be totally your own, and then others could be people that are coming up with like novel solutions for specific things.
Yep.
That seems like a very good idea.
Thank you.
I know with machine vision, when AI started to come into that space, lots of people came in and were like, hey, we can do machine vision or computer vision. And every time somebody mentions computer vision, I was like, yeah, I know that you probably don't know what to do now to procure the image that you're working on. Because when you say computer vision, I am going to assume that you've worked in a lab on lots of images and come up with something really cool, but like you were not the one making those images. And then the consistent capturing of the images that matter is a totally different skill. Mm-hmm. Not to say that you can't build a company that has both skill sets, but I think over the last 15 years, I saw quite a few of those kind of like AI companies then going, oh, and now we have to worry about actually getting the images, right? And putting the hardware on the line, and then the lighting. Oh, that's a really big piece of it. So you're kind of solving maybe like a foundational problem that can bring the entire industry ahead with options.
Yes.
That can empower other innovators as well.
That's absolutely our hope. Yes. And we've already started working with a number of these companies who are, looking at our solution as the thing that can get their solution out into the fields instead of having to build their own system.
Yeah. Okay. That is super cool.
And our entire mechanical design is open source, and so it's very easy to integrate with. Can be manufactured, modified, or repaired really anywhere in the world, because we're using really simple processes to manufacture. That's kind of been our ethos from the beginning, is low cost, modular, and repairable. So it's really easy for an innovator in another space to work with our designs, and we can work together to automate their solutions and get them actually rolling.
That's really cool, and that's really not common in what I say our industry, like the traditional industrial automation and factory automation space. That is not common. um, to have any kind of open source anything, and people are less worried about barriers to entry than they are about keeping moats and keeping people like kind of locked into your ecosystem. But then again, I guess if your customer is typically like you looking at big manufacturers with big budgets, that's a totally different thing than looking at like a long tail of small farms that are not well capitalized. What was it that made you go after that market? I guess really your experience on that farm. But when you think it through, like, I guess if you wouldn't mind, walk me a little bit through your thought process behind, hey, I can fix these problems, or I have something to offer, right, to these farmers, and you've experienced some of these things working on the farm. How do you get to, like, because obviously doing a startup, you got to have a nice business plan, pitch deck, like how is your company going to make money? Was that ever a question of like, do we price high and keep our IP versus like opening it up? Like, is that a big commercial, I guess, kind of like debate that you got to have internally, or did you always have the site, like that's how you were going to do it, is go open source, try to proliferate this as much as possible?
Well, that's a great question. Of course, the business plan was, part of the thinking from the beginning is, I want to help these people, and I think it's a really, worthwhile cause. And also, this company needs to make money because we need to, pay employees and sell things and actually make it happen. So yes, there is definitely a business model here as well. I mean, we've talked to a number of our beta customers who have seen our demos, who have seen our systems, and we've talked through solutions. We know that there is a lot of value here, even in an open source way. Making it open source doesn't necessarily mean, and it's just our mechanical design is open source, so we still have a lot of IP and other aspects of our design. But by making it open source, it actually makes it more appealing to a lot of customers because they're able to fix it themselves, modify it themselves. We've had customers say, if you make it that easy to hack on it, farmers are going to hack on it. And we're saying, that's great. That's what we want. Farmers are some of the original engineers. They've been hacking on things since, the dawn of time. We want that. We want them to make it work for them, for their systems, because every solution is so different. And then also the repairability aspect. A lot of farmers are very frustrated. I'm sure you heard me talk about this at Automate, by the current lack of the right to repair. So being able to actually fix the equipment that they buy, I paid for this, I bought it, it's mine, but I can't fix it myself. You can't tell me what's inside of it. And it used to be, before all this kind of, adding computers and sensors and whatnot, that no one needed to tell you, right, how it worked, because you can figure it out and you can fix it yourself. And that's one thing we want to enable with even with the higher tech and more advanced solutions that we're offering. We want to still maintain that ethos with our customers of this does belong to you, and you should be able to fix it, and you should be able to modify it for what you want to do, because every use case is just so different, and we couldn't possibly make a one size fits all solution. So there's a lot of value there for our customers, and so they're definitely it definitely appeals to them to have that design ethos.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I can't say I personally have grown up on a farm or worked on a farm, but my grandparents were farmers, and dairy farmers in Iceland, actually.
Oh, wow.
And my grandpa built his own hydroelectric dam to provide electricity to his farm, and. Wow. And like, he's not an engineer of any kind. He was a facilities maintenance person at a local community college after my grandparents' farmhouse unfortunately burned down.
Oh,
and then the larger farm got inherited by other parts of the family. And so my grandparents ended up moving into town, and that therefore ended our farming days, I guess. But I have that kind of background, and just knowing also, like, and he also took care of the playgrounds in my town for many, many, many years. And he had like a piece of land where they kept all the playground equipment and stuff. And he repaired everything. And like, he also grew up during like World War II. So there was just this like general ethos of like, you keep things self-sufficient, and you keep anything can be reusable. And, there's, and people have this like engineering mindset without being educated engineers of any kind, which is build what we need, keep it running, make it better. I think we've kind of lost that. And it was really sad for me to hear, like, tangentially, because again, not having been involved with agriculture for a long time in any kind of official capacity, you definitely hear these stories about like the right to repair stuff and how agriculture is one of the most advanced automated industries there exists in the world, if you are kind of at that high end, right, and can buy that very expensive equipment from these manufacturers that, like some of the tractors and stuff, like they started doing IoT before, you know, even regular cars were building these things in, and like they're very high, can be very, very high tech. But that also seemed to be completely the realm of the big, very, very big monoculture type crop farms that invested heavily or can invest in these automated equipments. But then, yeah, they completely like have no access to be able to modify or repair, which just seemed to kind of, yeah, go against the whole ethos of like what farmers do and how they operate and what how they've always done that. And then, of course, what it's done to our food supply is one of those things that, like, it's not the topic of our podcast. It's something I care a lot about, and it's a weird subject because being involved in automation and factory automation, it's like, hey, we all love food and beverage. It's a growing industry. And then at in the very same thought, I'm like, but I don't want to buy more ultra-processed and packaged food for my family. Well, at the same time, I'm like loving the fact that there's more machinery. So it's kind of a weird, tricky place to be in.
Yeah, no,
I would love, like, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, I completely agree. You know, you're seeing a lot of consolidation of agriculture into these big monocrop and monoculture farms, and you're seeing that, you know, they can afford some of the more advanced, more specialized, like I was talking about, solutions, you know, and yeah, maybe they don't necessarily need to have as much control over that because maybe they have different budgetary constraints, or they have, you know, different operating mindsets of, you know, if something's broken, just send it out and get things, you know, keep it going. But yeah, like you said, it's not always the healthiest solution. Oftentimes, you know, these kinds of companies use a lot of pesticides, or, you know, if you're doing like monoculture, it's not necessarily good for the environment. So you know, I think it would be really incredible. You know, I've always had access. I've always been very lucky to have access to local farms with, you know, a CSA share, and I can get, you know, 10 different kinds of vegetables from, you know, my neighbor down the street. And that's the farm that I worked at in Waltham. Shout out to Waltham Community Farms, an incredible farm that does CSAs and also donates a lot of their food to food banks nearby so that everybody can have access to fresh, healthy food. And so, yeah, my dream would be anybody in the country, anybody in the world can have access to local, fresh, healthy food. But unfortunately, a lot of these farms we've talked to, you know, a number of farms in the area and elsewhere, and you're hearing the same thing over and over again, which is we can barely afford to keep going with this. Oftentimes they have supplemental income, just because it's so hard to do that in such a sustainable way. One of the biggest problems that they have is labor, paying people to harvest things, to, you know, to do all the steps of the process. It's not as sustainable as, you know, consolidating and doing these monoculture farms. So yeah, we're kind of at a crossroads here, and I think that where Rotate8 is coming in and saying we want to make it possible for these small farms to be sustainable and be profitable, and helping them, you know, become more efficient but still produce that healthy local food is so important.
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of people that listening to this from a personal standpoint would love to see that be the future, so that we can eat more of that food that actually also has like nutrients in it. Because like nowadays it's a big personal struggle, I think, for a lot of people to try to eat healthier, right? And then like you go to a big grocery store and you just pick, like you buy fruits and veggies, but they don't have the nutrients they used to have in them. So even if you're making like great personal choices, if the system isn't set up for the products that are available to you to actually like give you what you think you're getting from those choices, then yeah, like what's the point? Like I was looking into something about beets. Like beets are supposed to be a really good source of nitric oxide, nitric oxide, I think, which helps increase blood flow.
Okay.
But in the past, beets used to be a really good source of this. But if you go to the grocery store and buy beets, apparently they just don't have these compounds anymore that like lead to that. So people read articles, they're like, eat more beets, it'll help. And it's like, no, actually they don't. Like if you just buy a modern can of beets, like it's not going to have all that stuff. And it's not like we can test all of that at home. But yeah, so I'm going off on tangents here and stuff. But I worked at a startup for 3.5 years. Shout out to Quotebeam. it was an amazing journey that I loved, being an early stage startup employee. But I also, like, my health took a toll. It took a toll on my health because I was not good at managing my time. I was not good at managing my stress. I let my diet lapse, and like my exercise, like all of my good routines. I was like, oh, I just need for the next 3 months, like, just to push past this next round or this next thing, or like until I hire a person to take care of X.
Right.
And so I gave myself a lot of these like permissions to take these temporary sprints where all I cared about was work, and other things fell by the wayside. And last year when I ended up finally needing to step back and like leave that, and because I have little kids that all of a sudden aren't as little anymore, like this startup stuff, it goes by like super fast, right? And I just, so health was one of those things that like I pushed it out of my mind for a while, and then I realized how quickly that stuff catches up with you. And so I was also like, mental health, I needed a reset. Physical health, I needed a reset. My diet, like my getting out, all of that kind of stuff. And so it's been more in the forefront of my mind lately, because I've been trying to keep it as I like took another job this year. And Automation Ladies is not a startup, but it is the closest thing I've ever had to being in charge of something where other people like work and things like that. And it's a big responsibility mentally, I think. And so I've tried to keep that enthusiasm for me alive. And so I tried to keep like doing research and listening to health stuff, not just businessy stuff. But I'm curious, you as a female startup founder, you're a little bit earlier in what looks like, but I'm a really bad judge of like ages, and you don't need to say how old you are, but do you have a family yet? Like, do you have kids or anything?
I do not have kids. I have a dog who's like my son, but I do not have human children.
Okay, so that also helps. You have a little bit more extra time, or like you don't realize you don't have it until after. But like, just think about before you had your dog, right? Like you had no one to take care of. The pressure just exponentially increases as you have more people that you're taking care of. But is that something that you think about as a startup founder and as the CEO of a company? You kind of set the tone for that for your employees, what your your work kind of life and culture, company culture is. And I ask that also knowing, and just throw this out there, Daniel, who is your co-founder, is that?
He's an advisor and an investor. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I had a chat with him at the beginning of last month, May, because it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And so I know it's something that's pretty important to him. At Vecna, I think he said he started to have some of those conversations internally, and they struck a chord with a lot of his employees who didn't necessarily want to talk about it publicly, but they appreciated that it was being talked about. So is that something that you guys have made a point to make a big part of your company, or how do you think about that as a leader?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've worked at startups where the culture is, you work until you can't work anymore, and then you burn out, and maybe you quit, or maybe you take a big break or whatnot. I don't want this to be a company where we work our asses off for a year and a half and then sell it and then I'll retire or whatever. I want this to be a company that we can sustain. I want to grow this company slowly and sustainably, just like I feel about food. I want to grow it, sustainably. And so I do try to set an example there of I don't work crazy hours, probably more than I would at a normal job, but nothing nothing heinous. And I try to eat really healthy. We're working right on a farm, and we're very fortunate that we actually get to eat a lot of the farm food. So we have very fresh, like the freshest possible, healthiest food and imaginable. We actually have like 1,000 chickens here, and so fresh eggs all the time, fresh vegetables and fruit. It's really special. It's really wonderful. And I guess prioritizing if my employees they need to work from home for a couple of days, or they need to leave early, and never punishing that, never even trying to make it very clear that that's okay, and that I'd rather those employees take care of themselves and show up every day as the best version of themselves, both because obviously that's good for the business, but more importantly because I care about them as people. These people are my friends. They're people I see every day, and I think they're amazing, and I want them to be healthy and happy, outside of work and at work. So yeah, that's definitely a culture of, we take care of ourselves, we take breaks, we eat well, we exercise, we get enough sleep. I don't want you, I'd rather just do it tomorrow. I don't want you staying up until midnight, finishing this code or finishing this module. I'd rather you get a good night's sleep and come in and do it tomorrow, because it's going to be just more sustainable in the long run for you as a person and us as a company.
Yeah. Which I'm sure is a hard thing to balance, against, because when you're in that startup phase, sometimes there are things that are, very time sensitive, or if you don't move fast enough, does that feel like a struggle ever, or is it pretty natural for you to have those boundaries and make sure that, that's how you guys are running?
That has come up before. We had this this event coming up that we needed a really rock solid system for, and we were still having a couple bugs that were pretty system wide. So not like one person could really come in and just fix the problem themselves. We all had to sort of be there and help and make it happen. And there was a period of time where we all spent maybe a week or 2 weeks working very, very hard and working weekends and working long hours. And I guess, we all knew that was a deadline that was coming up and was not something that was going to make everyone do, on a regular basis. This is a, kind of external pressure situation. And, after that, we said, okay, everybody take 3 days off, just take a break, because you all worked very, very hard and we appreciate you and we don't want you to burn out. So just take some time off after that. And we will try as much as we can not to make this a regular habit. I think, a couple times a year you can do sprints like that, but I wouldn't try to do that to them every month, because I think, first of all, everyone would quit. and also I don't think it'd be a sustainable way to continue with progress. I think when you are, I think there's a time and place to be hyper-focused on a single goal and a single topic. And I think that we do that every once in a while here. But I think there's also a lot of room for learning and creativity and progress to be made in other areas, that if you are only hyper-focusing all the time, you don't have a time to take a breath and say, oh, what if we did this actually kind of, instead of pushing so hard to make this one thing work, what if we did things a little bit differently, and then we wouldn't have to, do this crazy push to force something into working. We can do it again more sustainably. So,
yeah, stepping back and taking time in nature, in particularly, also I found can really help get unstuck or give you ideas or things that if you just continue to try to press on the problem, you're not going to get. I have some of my best thinking time in the shower.
Yep.
And so sometimes if I'm stuck on something, or I'm just having what I feel like is a bad day, or I feel like I'm getting nowhere, sometimes I will just take a break from the day and go take a shower. Because it resets my day a little.
Yeah.
I feel refreshed after. But oftentimes I just have these random thoughts of whatever, and I let my mind wander. I'm not trying to go in this shower and then solve the problem. But I guess it's something about, there is a routine that just, once I'm in the shower, I know I'm going to wash my hair, I'm going to do, these things, and it becomes a little bit more mechanical, and my head gets kind of, clear. That, or, doing dishes. Do you have any extracurricular activities that help you decompress, or that you find yourself doing to try to help with, cope with anything stress-wise that would be interesting or different?
Yeah, so I often try to go for runs in the morning, which I think really helps. I go out in the ocean, so take my shoes off and go for a run, and really just try to relax. I don't try to think of, again, like you said with the shower, I don't try to go in there and think, okay, I've been having this issue and I need to solve it, and so I'm gonna go for a run and just think about it. You just kind of, like you said, you let your mind wander, you let the your kind of subconscious kind of chew on it for a bit. So I definitely do that. I take lots of walks around the farm, and with my dog I take him for lots of walks, and have my activities that I do, to exercise and keeping myself busy. I read a lot. I do a lot of reading, both audiobooks and physical books. So things to try to take my mind away from it for a little bit. And I think when you come back, you are definitely refreshed. And even during those activities, sometimes you have an aha moment because you weren't even trying to think of it, but it comes up.
Yeah.
So.
What are you reading? What are you reading right now? Or what's the most notable thing you've read recently that you would want other people to know about?
Oh gosh, to be honest, I don't read business books or anything that's really. Right now, I'm in a book club with some of my friends, and we're reading the Wax and Wayne trilogy, which is a fantasy series about. It's kind of like a steampunk fantasy series with just a magic system, but they also have guns. So it's pure fun, and I think that's a good way. I think I have tried before to keep my reading focused on business development or, 10 coolest startups and how they ended up succeeding and that kind of thing. And I find that it's really hard to get through those things. And so it makes me just hate reading. And I think it's overall better for me to have a hobby that is relaxing and I don't have to force myself to, after work, do something that I hate.
Yeah, for sure. If I'm not a big reader anymore, and it saddens me to say, because I've been a big reader earlier on in my life, but then when I started working a lot and stuff, I kind of like let go of it. I don't do it as much, but I also am a fantasy reader. Like give me historical fiction or fantasy, like some totally different world that I can learn about, whether it's real or not. But like, yeah, I think the further away from real life, the better, because, and I'm not a huge fan, or like just nonfiction reading doesn't hold my interest as much as something like that. But I will say now, as an older person with less like total free time, I gravitate towards like watching stuff on Netflix rather than reading actual books. And I need to do some changing of how I do things, because I think, not that that's necessarily wrong, but I like to do it because I can fold laundry or do dishes at the same time and like watch a show on Netflix. And I like, it's kind of got my visual attention, but then I'm also just listening. And it allows me to feel like I took a break mentally while at the same time I'm accomplishing something useful. And audiobooks now are big. And the reason I never got into audiobooks when I was younger is because I'm a fast talker and a fast reader. And like audiobooks are just way too slow for me. And I just immediately, like, I just get ahead and start thinking about something else. And then I realize I've been listening for 20 minutes and I have no idea what the narrator just said because I've been somewhere else totally in my head. But now you can speed up audiobooks.
Yep.
And so I thought that would be like now that's my magic bullet. Like I can get back into audiobooks. But the thing that trips me up is that people just sound so weird. Like when they're sped up, they sound garbled or like, and so I can get to like 1.4 maybe before I feel like I'm just listening to like an alien reading super fast. So I don't know. Do you listen at regular speeds when you listen to audiobooks, or are you speeding from that?
No, I do. And I will say also, I am also a very fast talker. I've been trying not to do that on this podcast right now because I've been told it's hard to understand me. Especially, non-native English speakers always tell me that when they're like learning English, I'm like the final boss for learning English because I'm so hard to understand. So I try to slow it down for this. But I listen to audiobooks at normal speeds, and I also typically do other things, especially lately I've had to do a ton of soldering for work. I have to solder all these boards, take me hours, and that's a really nice time to listen to audiobooks. I need to sort of pay attention to what I'm doing enough that it's high quality, but I can still think and listen to audiobooks. So that and driving are both times when I can't really do anything else, so I might as well have an audiobook on, and maybe I don't need to catch every word because I will definitely, like you said, get very distracted, especially if I'm working, I'm thinking how can I improve this? How can I, get through this? So, I listen to audiobooks at regular speeds. I agree. It does sound kind of weird when you start to speed it up.
Yeah. I met a gentleman up in Seattle earlier this year. He's the founder of a company called Groundlight AI. I believe I'm getting that right. And I apologize to my listeners and to him if he doubt he's listening to this, but I don't remember his name at the moment. But he is definitely the fastest talker I've ever met. And one of the first things he said too when we met him, he's like, I talk really fast and it's a really big problem, and I listen to audiobooks at like 2 something speed, and so I've only gotten faster with my talking and and I was like, oh my, okay, I see. So that scares me a little because I've been told slow down many times, but everybody processes at different speeds. But then I've learned to read like facial cues better now, so sometimes when I'm talking and people like have a face, I'm like, oh, it's not because, okay, you process maybe a little bit slower than I do. But for a while I was thinking like sometimes it would happen and people really don't like me or don't understand what I'm saying. But you kind of learn to read those cues. And then I've also realized like sometimes I talk, I'm not a native English speaker actually. So I moved here from Iceland when I was in middle school and I got made fun of for not speaking good English. I was also placed in lower level classes because they thought I wasn't very smart because I didn't speak very good English. Mm-hmm. And so I've always had this drive to prove them wrong and show them that I'm actually quite smart. and speaking very good English was kind of what my biggest checkbox for getting that across. And so I overshot it a bit, I think, and I developed like a very extensive vocabulary. And then in some circles, you're told like, oh, you're trying to sound too smart, like use regular words. But I guess it very much depends on too, like who is in your environment and who you're talking to.
Yep.
I think that's part of the reason why we have this podcast, because I can nerd out with people about industrial automation stuff that nobody else cares about. Nobody in my personal life would want to listen to me drone on about this or that machine or the control system or robot or whatever. Even though I don't know, I thought robots were more like popular culture cool than industrial automation. But then my husband tells me that people really don't care about robots that much either.
They only care about the, like, if like Boston Dynamics robot does a backflip, everyone's really on board with that. But when it comes to, like day-to-day robotics, like an arm in a warehouse, or, even my like very cool, like Mars rover looking farm rover. Yeah. Most people are like, great. Don't need to hear more about that. Looks fun.
Yeah. So how about farmers? Like, where do you find that their vocabulary and their willingness and interest in this technology, where does that land? Like, is it pretty much like, hey, show to me solving my problem? Or do you find that they're actually interested in like the mechanics behind it? Or does that vary?
I think interest and bandwidth to engage with it is a very different thing. A lot of farmers are super interested. They love the idea of it. It's really cool. When it comes down to it, like when it's their job, they need it to work. And they just want to, do a process that works for them. And I will say there are definitely notable exceptions. We have a number of people we're working with, beta customers, potential partners who are just super thrilled with the idea of automation and really excited by like how this is going to shape the future. And so there are notable exceptions, but for the most part, especially with these small farms that are frankly struggling to survive, they need, what's my ROI? Like, how fast can I get this up and running? Is it going to, cause more pain than it's worth? I just need it to work. And I get that. When you're, at work, even if you want to be really engaged in something, you want to be really excited about something, you have a job to do and you have to make ends meet, with your business. So, I get it. Even if it's cool, it might not be cool enough to, spend that much time and mental energy on. Yeah,
absolutely. For the business model, do farmers have to outright like buy this equipment? Or are there renting or leasing options, or how does that look for them in terms of barrier to entry or being able to give something like this a try for a smaller farm?
Yeah, that's a great question. So primarily our model is direct sales. We found that when we're talking to these people, they're really not thrilled with like having a monthly subscription or another like payment on the books. They want to just kind of buy.
Oh, you're kidding! People don't want more monthly subscriptions.
Yeah, believe it or not, everyone says, "Oh, you should do a robots as a service, like a monthly." I'm like, there's definitely services that you can do with that, add-ons or things that might be relevant. I understand that from a business perspective, monthly, recurring revenue is very valuable. So we've definitely explored options for that, and also some customers don't have the upfront cash to purchase a system like this. I will say it is very inexpensive. Our entire robotic system is $10,000, which is really not a lot when you look at what it's doing, and the ROI, because if you calculate like average labor cost, the ROI is a matter of like 3 or 4 months. So it's, I would say, very reasonable, especially because that's our kind of our core design process is get everything to be as inexpensive as possible, because our customers, that's the number one thing they need. But yes, we have explored options for and as I mentioned, we're not in like open sales yet. We're kind of still in the sort of partnerships for like beta testing and a closed beta. But yes, we've explored options for a lease or a rent or a lease to buy type thing, as options for everybody.
Yeah, and then there's so many options now too for third-party companies to facilitate that even if you didn't end up doing that in-house, I'm sure there's plenty of options for people to get equipment financing and
lots
things
of
like
people
that.
approach us at Automate about that, so I have a couple contacts now. Yeah. So
yeah, a lot of players in the industry looking to make connections for that.
Yep.
Yeah, speaking of Automate, so was this your first Automate, or have you been before?
This is my first time at Automate. Yeah.
Do you have any, what are your thoughts? And have you been to other types of trade shows for other industries? Or like, what initial reactions, if any, or thoughts do you have about Automate and kind of that community and what you experienced there?
Yeah, no. So I've been to other trade shows. I've been to, for instance, FIRA is a big one for Agtech. It's ag robotics, and so it's a lot more specialized, and people tend to be looking for exactly our kind of product. Yeah, Automate was interesting. I will say, as I mentioned earlier, I knew going into it that it was not a very ag tech focused conference, and in fact, we're the only ag tech company there at all. So I think and a lot of people came to our booth and were very excited about it and wanted more of this content. And so I actually had an opportunity to talk to I forget the guy who organizes the conference, but I talked to him during the startup pitch, and I told him that people are looking for more of this, and I think it's a great opportunity to there were a lot of very similar companies there, which is great, and you want to hear what there is out there to offer, but I think that expanding into different industries could draw different types of crowds and could be interesting. Some of the people we talked to were interested in helping us with leasing and financing options, or even people who again had technology that they were looking to have a platform for to get it into the fields. And so that kind of opportunity would be great for the conference, I think, to expand. Although I will say it was a very big conference, so I'm not sure how much more they could they could expand that.
Yeah.
Huge floor. I mean, I didn't have I was manning the booth most of the time. I didn't really take my team because it wasn't very focused on ag tech, and I didn't want to waste a ton of engineering time sitting at a booth. So I didn't even get time to see the whole floor. I did maybe like 2 walkabouts, and I did not see the conference because it was just so big.
Yeah, it keeps getting bigger. I also did not get a chance to see probably 95% of the floor.
Yeah.
Because I had a booth this year. The company that I work for now, called WinTech, or WineTech, we make HMIs, so the human-machine interfaces that go on machinery. I've always thought of them in the context of industrial, like factory automation, but they're used in tons of other things, including greenhouses, building access panels, essentially. They can be used anywhere where you would want to have some sort of operator, like input or display, and that be kind of like part of the control system.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually had one customer who is a former dairy farmer turned controls engineer, and he does controls and automation for other farmers because he comes at it with the background of understanding kind of like what they need, what they don't need, what they can pay for, what they're going to be willing to pay for.
Right.
And he just recently kind of made a standardized product because he's done a lot of systems integration to help farmers with upgrading some of their systems, adding automation to stuff, things like that. And he developed or found, it's really common components from the industry in a sense, but tested it on enough applications with enough farmers to be like, hey, this is kind of a standard system that I want to offer. And he recently came out with this thing called Level Command, but seems pretty simple, but it's there's a lot of small farms out there that don't have the basics of automation down. Like you said, somebody, walking around and turning on and off sprinklers. And so this is a radar level sensor that sits at the top of like a hopper or a bin. So grain bin, whatever. And then, an easy interface for them to be able to input the values that they want. And so they don't have to program stuff. They don't have to know how to go into the PLC or whatever, but it's just like an out of the box kind of, he knows what components work well for this application. It's got a Vega radar level sensor and a WinTech HMI that is very low cost, very low barrier to entry. It comes with a bunch of stuff built in that you would otherwise have to pay, like licensing fees, subscription fees. And he's like, yeah, for the farmers, like, this is a no-go. Like, you're not going to pay, tens of thousands of dollars for a screen, and they're not going to want to pay, tens of thousands of dollars to access to this environment, to make changes to the program, so on and so forth. And it's not coming up with brand new products that don't exist, but it's coming up with something that is built for this particular kind of end user, which I think a farmer is a pretty specific, you have to understand their world to kind of know what really solving their use cases means. It's not just, okay, it can do A, but it can do A within X constraints with the type of time and expertise that these farmers are willing or able to put into these systems.
Yep. And at a price point that they can actually afford that makes sense to them.
That can actually afford. Yeah, exactly. So I'm very excited to see what the future holds for you guys. I bet your website has cool videos and things, right? Where we can check out like some examples of your stuff on the farm, or where's the coolest Boston Dynamics robot jumping type video for your stuff that someone could find?
That's a great question. We are working on getting more, better videos, making our website better. It's not one of our priorities because we have a very small team. And so, maybe 2% of my time is spent trying to make things pretty enough to take good videos and putting them on the internet. So we do have, on LinkedIn is a really good place to see all of our content. We try to get it all in there. So have a couple of videos. We recently posted about at the farm we automated an incubation system, so we have a bunch of baby chicks coming out, which is very exciting, very cute, and also nice because it used to be we were kind of using a lot of these off-the-shelf systems, and there's this alarm that goes off if the temperature gets too low or certain parameters are met because the chickens will die. So it's important to have an alarm, but used to go off a lot, and so what happened is the farm just disconnected the system because it was just annoying and it wasn't worth it, and they were just buying chicks.
Yeah.
And then as I'm sure chickens were having some health issues, and so it was actually became very difficult to get baby chicks. They told us a month ago it was going to be October before we could get any chicks, which is just ridiculous because that's not the scale of farming. So we automated the system using our IoT devices, and I can say that the alarm has not gone off in 3 to 4 weeks, which is when we started automating the system. So it's very nice, and we have tons of baby chicks running around here, which is very cute and definitely helping. So that's one of our most recent kind of updates, and yeah, all of our kind of exciting news we're trying to get out there on our website, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, whatnot.
Okay, so with that plug make sure to go follow Rotate8, and that's spelled like the word rotate and then the number 8. I'm sure your website, rotate8.com, and then LinkedIn, you can find you there, both Katie Bradford, your company. If you're familiar with Daniel Theobald, he's with Mass Robotics as well, kind of well connected in that world. You can probably find him and follow the company through there. What other things would you like, if anybody's listening to this and is interested in working with you guys, or just, I always like to think you never know who listens to this episode now or whatever in the near future, and they maybe know someone that knows someone, right? So like what ideas can we plant in their brains or our listeners' brains about what you want, who do you want to work with, who do you want to find you, and what types of things are you looking for right now, whether partners, customers, investors? Tell us who you'd like to do business with in some way, shape, or form, and then how they should come find you if somebody knows that person or they are that person.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first and foremost, farmers who are interested in automation for a low cost, things that are modular, things that are repairable, if that speaks to you, please reach out to us. We're really interested in building those relationships as we kind of scale up for selling our products in a more wide network. Also, other technology partners. So as I mentioned, we're working with a number of people who are, automating a certain process on a farm. Maybe they have an AI system for detecting weeds, or a mechanism for an implement for the farm, and they need to get that out into the field. Please talk to us. This is a great opportunity for us to kind of work together and build something that is going to really work for you, and kind of customize it again very easily for your needs. So those are the kind of the main things we're looking for right now. And then we every once in a while we have job openings, so follow along on LinkedIn and on our website for when we're hiring. It's a really great team to be a part of. I really love it. We're very small but mighty. Get a lot done, and we get to work with robots and get to work outside. So it's a pretty great. I think it's a pretty sweet deal.
It's a pretty sweet combo, because I know also in like controls, there's controls can be inside or outside, or in plants, or they can be out we were just talking about this with some we did an episode on ticks and tick-borne illnesses last week, and how does that have to do with automation? Well, I know a bunch of controls engineers that love to go hunting, so that's one thing, but two, there's actually controls out there in the side of ditches, on in water treatment facilities. There is a lot of controls work that can happen outside.
Yep.
And ticks are apparently way more dangerous than I thought, and they can get up in your clothes and give you all kinds of illnesses.
Lyme disease is a big fear of mine. Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah. Oh, I will also add, for people who should reach out to us, a number of students have reached out to us that want to do projects. If they're studying something in a lab and they want to do it in a more real environment, or work with our technology to develop those things, please reach out. We're always interested in hosting student projects. You can come here to our lab, where we can send you things and work together and collaborate on some really cool projects. So that's another person who should reach out to us.
All right, great. We will also have links to some of the links that we mentioned in Katie's guest profile. And Katie, feel free to update us if there's any big, changes, links, things. We can always update those links associated with your profile on the automationladies.io page. And yeah, Vinny, if you're listening, sorry, I mentioned your level command. I mentioned what you do. I don't think I mentioned your name. So Vinny Endress with Bitmast Automation is our resident kind of in-network ag automation guy. So I'd love to connect you two as well. And you never know if some of the farms that he's working on because I don't think he does a lot of like field-based automation stuff. It's more in some of the facilities and things like that, but you never know. And then I'm going to give a quick pitch for OT SCADACon. It is our little community conference focused on lots of different areas within systems integration, automation, both process and discrete automation. And we do have a little section presented by Vinny, thank you, about agriculture automation. And it is by far one of the most popular sections of the conference because so many people just don't know about it and their eyes open super wide when just talking about like what is it that happens on farms and what are the types of automations that they use and can use and I think because we all eat food, we all have some relation to agriculture and how it works and we should care. And if we aren't learning about that, we probably should be. As much as we all love big factory automated food and beverages, that is not the majority of what we should be eating. So I would love to see, more sustainable farming practices, smaller operators be able to be profitable with the use of automation. I think that's one of the things that those of us that love automation for the reasons why we see positive potential changes in society due to automation, it's then important to put some of our focus into the companies and people that are actually trying to make that happen, including Katie. So thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. My weird style of just, hey, let's just go on and have a conversation. I really appreciate it when people are open to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
And I look forward to following you guys, and I wish you a lot of success, and I hope to see you around at future shows.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it, and have a great one.
You too. Bye.